They observe your quiet confidence, your deliberate movements, your unnerving lack of need for their approval, and a cascade of reactions begins. They see you navigate the world by an internal compass they can't decipher, and it unsettles them, fascinates them, and often exposes them. In a world clamoring for attention, your self-contained energy speaks volumes, marking you as different, as someone who operates on a higher frequency. Welcome to Sigma Male Community, the sanctuary for men who walk their own path, who build their own thrones, and who understand that true power is an inside game, a testament to unwavering self-mastery. Today we dissect the phenomenon of your impact, exploring the 22 unmistakable things people do when they recognize that a Sigma male isn't just another player, but potentially the one who redefines the entire game, the chosen one, chosen not by fate, but by a relentless dedication to his own sovereign principles. These aren't just observations. They are reflections of the ripples your stoic strength sends through a world desperate for authenticity yet often terrified by it. We're about to delve deep into the psychology of those who witness a man living by his own code, a man whose very existence challenges the superficial norms they cling to. Pay attention, because understanding these reactions isn't just about understanding others. It's about understanding the profound gravity of your own journey towards independent excellence. Let's begin. 1. The phantom competition. When they perceive a Sigma male's inherent strength and self-sufficiency, a peculiar unease settles in some individuals, sparking what can only be described as a phantom competition. They begin to battle ghosts, shadows of perceived rivalry cast by his sheer presence, not by any overt challenge he issues. You'll witness them suddenly overachieve in areas they think he values, or flaunt status symbols with an uncharacteristic intensity, perhaps even fabricating subtle conflicts or rivalries, all in a desperate attempt to measure up or assert dominance in an arena he himself never acknowledged entering. This desperate dance for relevance is often a bewildering spectacle, a one-sided contest fueled by their own projections. The triggers for this shadow boxing are deceptively simple. His profound indifference to their perceived hierarchies. When the Sigma male doesn't scan the room for challengers, when he doesn't subtly flex his own status or engage in the typical peacocking rituals, their own insecurities ignite. His lack of engagement isn't a slight, but a reflection of his internal focus, yet they interpret this as a silent judgment or an unspoken challenge. Their egos, accustomed to a world of explicit power plays, cannot comprehend a man who simply is, without needing to prove. The true tragedy of their phantom competition lies in its utter futility and the Sigma male's typical obliviousness to it. He isn't judging their frantic efforts. He is, more often than not, entirely consumed by his own purpose, his own mission, his own internal metrics of growth. His focus orbits the development of his character and the execution of his goals, not the performative struggles of those around him. He embodies the Stoic ideal of focusing on his own actions and judgments, rendering external validation or competition for it largely irrelevant. Every promotion they boastfully announce in his vicinity, every material acquisition they conspicuously display, every trophy they symbolically wave in his direction, it all echoes into the vast expanse of his silence. And that silence, born not of arrogance but of genuine detachment from their world of external validation, has a way of drowning their supposed victory laps in a haunting sense of irrelevance. Their victories are for an audience that isn't watching, for a competitor who isn't competing. Ultimately, their phantom competition becomes a mirror reflecting their own lack of inner peace and self-assuredness. The Sigma male, by simply living according to his own resilient framework, inadvertently exposes the brittle foundations of egos built on comparison. Their frantic energy serves only to highlight his calm, steady progress, a stark reminder that the most significant victories are won within, far from the madding crowd's imaginary battlefields. 2. Emotional archaeology. There's a distinct pattern of behavior that emerges when people are confronted with the enigmatic presence of a Sigma male. They become emotional archaeologists, attempting to excavate his past as if it holds the single, definitive key to understanding him. Old social media profiles are meticulously sifted, decade-old rumors are revived and analyzed, and a casual, throwaway comment from a former acquaintance can suddenly be treated as a critical piece of evidence in their quest to solve the puzzle he represents. This compulsion stems from a deep-seated human need to categorize, to label, to fit everyone into a neat, understandable box. The driving force behind this emotional excavation is often fear. The Sigma male's present mystique, his self-contained nature, and his unpredictable authenticity can be profoundly threatening to those who rely on predictable social scripts and transparent motivations. Uncertainty, for many, is a far more terrifying prospect than any imagined darkness they might uncover. They believe that by digging deep enough, they can unearth a vulnerability, a past trauma, or a hidden flaw that will make him make sense, according to their conventional understanding of human behavior. Yet, the deeper these emotional archaeologists dig, the less they often seem to grasp the true essence of the Sigma male. He is, by nature, a dynamic entity, a flowing river constantly carving new paths, not a static fossil preserved in the amber of his past. While his history undoubtedly forged him, shaping his resilience and his perspectives, it does not chain him or define his present trajectory. He learns from his past, integrates its lessons with stoic acceptance, and moves forward, embodying the principle of continuous self-improvement. Their frantic research, their endless sifting through the debris of bygone days, ultimately proves only one undeniable truth: you cannot map a horizon. The Sigma male is always evolving, his internal landscape too vast and too personal to be charted by external observers looking for simple explanations. Each clue they unearth is merely a snapshot of a moment, not the entirety of the man. In the end, this obsessive quest to decode him through his past says more about the diggers than the one being dug. It reveals their discomfort with the unquantifiable, their need to reduce complexity to simplicity. The Sigma male, meanwhile, continues to live in the present, building his future, while they remain preoccupied with a past he has already processed and transcended, proving that some depths are best left undisturbed, and some individuals are best understood by observing their present actions, not by dissecting their ancient history. 3. The Vulture Circle. When a Sigma male, despite his usual composure and competence, inevitably stumbles or faces a setback, a peculiar phenomenon often occurs. The Vulture Circle forms. Individuals who may have previously feigned indifference or even admiration can suddenly swarm, not with the intention to offer genuine help or support, but to feast on the perceived crack in his armor. They crave any sign of weakness: a missed deadline, a rare display of fatigue, a business venture that doesn't immediately succeed. It's a macabre form under scrutiny, a silent, collective lean-in to witness a perceived fall from grace. The psychological underpinning of this behavior is rooted in their own fragility and the discomfort his perceived invincibility causes them. The Sigma male's consistent display of self-mastery, his resilience in the face of adversity, often acts as an unwelcome mirror, reflecting their own insecurities and shortcomings. Seeing him bleed, even metaphorically, allows them to whisper to themselves, "See, he's human after all," as if humanity itself, with its inherent imperfections, were a flaw they've been waiting to expose in him. This perverse sense of relief comes from a place of wanting to level the playing field, not by elevating themselves, but by witnessing his descent. But here lies their fundamental miscalculation, their failure to grasp the core of the Sigma male strength, which is deeply intertwined with Stoic principles. He doesn't just anticipate stumbles, he accepts them as an inevitable part of growth and the human condition. He owns his mistakes and setbacks without excessive shame or frantic cover-ups. His strength isn't rooted in an illusion of perpetual perfection, but in his unwavering commitment to ownership, learning, and recovery. He views failures not as indictments of his worth, but as data points for future improvement. Their schadenfreude, their secret delight in his misfortune, quickly dies in the face of his unbroken calm and rational response. When they expect defensiveness, they find acceptance. When they anticipate despair, they encounter resilience. The Sigma male understands that adversity is a forge, and his stumbles are merely opportunities to demonstrate the power of a disciplined mind that refuses to be shattered by external circumstances. He focuses on his response, the one thing truly within his control. Thus, the Vulture Circle ultimately disperses unsatisfied. Their anticipated feast turns into a meager meal, as the Sigma male extracts wisdom from his missteps and continues his journey, often stronger and more focused than before. Their eagerness to witness his downfall only serves to highlight their own fear of falling, while he demonstrates that true strength is not about never falling, but about how one rises again and again. 4. Echo Chamber Confessions. It's a strange paradox that the Sigma male, often perceived as distant or intensely private, frequently becomes the unwilling recipient of deeply personal confessions. In crowded rooms, amidst the superficial chatter, individuals will gravitate towards his quiet presence and begin to whisper secrets they would never dream of telling their closest friends, their therapists, or even their romantic partners. His characteristic silence, often misinterpreted as aloofness by the casual observer, is perceived by these individuals not as emptiness, but as a sacred vault, a secure repository for their most vulnerable truths. The magnetism that draws these confessions isn't born of an invitation from the Sigma male. He rarely pries or prods. Instead, they sense intuitively that their truth, their raw, unfiltered anxieties and admissions, will not be weaponized against them. They perceive that their words won't be twisted, judged harshly, or diluted into salacious gossip spread through common channels. His demeanor, rooted in a stoic-like detachment from petty drama and a focus on more profound matters, offers an unspoken guarantee of discretion and a certain level of objective, non-emotive listening. This act of confessing to him often transcends mere trust. It feels more like a surrender and unburdening. They are, in essence, depositing their emotional debt, their anxieties, and their unfiltered thoughts into a bank that seems to promise absolute security, a bank that never appears to make withdrawals or charge interest in the form of reciprocal emotional demands. They pour out their hearts, seeking not necessarily advice or solutions, but simply the catharsis of being heard without immediate judgment or the burden of emotional entanglement. The dynamic can become complicated, however, when the Sigma male, true to his nature, offers no reciprocal vulnerability, no mirroring of their emotional outpour. After baring their souls, some may feel a subtle sense of being cheated, a feeling that the exchange was imbalanced. They mistake his capacity to listen without judgment for an invitation to a mutual vulnerability pact. But the sanctuary he inadvertently provides isn't, and was never intended to be, transactional. His strength lies in his self-containment, not in codependence. Ultimately, these echo chamber confessions highlight a profound societal hunger for genuine, non-judgmental listening. The Sigma male, by embodying a quiet strength and an air of impenetrable integrity, becomes a beacon for those adrift in their own emotional tempests. He doesn't seek the role of confessor, yet it is often thrust upon him, a testament to the rare and valuable commodity of a mind that can simply receive truth without needing to exploit or distort it. 5. The Chameleon Ploy. One of the more transparent yet revealing reactions to a Sigma male's distinct persona is the chameleon ploy. Observers, particularly those lacking a strong sense of self or those who admire his perceived power and freedom, will attempt to emulate his external characteristics. They start by copying his style of dress, his manner of speech, perhaps even adopting his characteristic walk or his specific, often minimalist, lifestyle choices. You might see them suddenly sporting similar leather jackets, practicing brooding stares in the mirror, or consciously shifting to monosyllabic, mysterious replies in conversation. It's an elaborate form of cosplay, an attempt to wear his aura like a costume. What these aspiring chameleons consistently miss is the fundamental truth that the Sigma male's power, his magnetism, isn't derived from what he wears, or the superficial aspects of how he behaves. It's derived from the why behind his choices, a profound, internally validated indifference to external judgment, a state often described by the colloquial phrase, "zero fucks given." His style isn't a curated image for public consumption. It's an authentic expression of his values, his comfort, and his priorities, which rarely include impressing others. Their imitation, no matter how meticulously crafted, almost always screams of effort and conscious construction. It lacks the effortless, unstudied quality that defines true authenticity. His genuine self-possession, on the other hand, whispers of an inevitability, a sense of being that is deeply rooted and unforced. The Stoics emphasized living in accordance with nature, one's own true nature, and the Sigma male embodies this, while the chameleon is merely applying a superficial veneer. The flaw in their strategy is the belief that aesthetics are the code, that by replicating the surface they can access the substance. They fail to understand that the Sigma's way of being is forged in solitude, in introspection, in countless small decisions made away from the public eye, decisions that reinforce his independence and self-reliance. It's an internal architecture that cannot be replicated by simply changing one's wardrobe or vocabulary. Ultimately, the chameleon ploy is doomed to fail, often resulting in a caricature rather than a convincing replica. You cannot counterfeit a soul that has been painstakingly forged in the fires of self-discovery and disciplined living. Their attempts only serve to highlight the very authenticity they seek to emulate, proving that the essence of the Sigma male is an internal state, not an external style to be borrowed or bought. 6. The invisible spotlight. A fascinating phenomenon occurs around Sigma males. An invisible spotlight seems to follow them, drawing attention effortlessly, even when they actively shun it. In meetings, at social gatherings, even in the mundane confines of an elevator, you'll notice eyes hooking onto him, conversations subtly shifting in his direction. This isn't because he demands it through flamboyant behavior or loud pronouncements. Quite the contrary, it's often precisely because he ignores the conventional chase for attention that it clings to him so tenaciously. People instinctively lean in, voices hush slightly, laughter might even become a little strained or performative in his presence, as if a magnetic field they can't consciously control has been activated. This subtle but powerful effect can be deeply unsettling, especially for those who thrive on being the center of attention through more overt means, the loud ones, the constant performers. Their carefully crafted jokes, their elaborate stories, their attempts at dominance plays often seem to deflate or fall flat in the quiet undertow of his presence. It's as if the ambient social energy which they desperately try to manipulate and direct towards themselves, naturally flows towards the individual who isn't begging for it, who exhibits a stoic-like self-sufficiency in his social interactions. The Sigma male doesn't seek this spotlight. In fact, he often finds it irrelevant or even a distraction from his internal objectives. His focus is typically inward, on his thoughts, his observations, or the purpose that brought him to that specific place or interaction. This lack of neediness, this absence of a desire to perform for validation, creates a vacuum that draws the attention of others. They sense a certain power, a self-contained authority that doesn't require their applause to exist, and this is both intriguing and, for some, intimidating. This invisible spotlight isn't about charisma in the traditional outgoing sense. It's more about presence, a grounded, centered quality that emanates from a man who is comfortable in his own skin and secure in his own mind. He doesn't need to fill silences with nervous chatter or seek constant affirmation through eye contact or agreement. His calm is a statement in itself, and in a noisy world, such calm is a rare and noticeable commodity. Consequently, the invisible spotlight serves as a passive filter, revealing the dynamics of attention in any given group. Those who understand and respect his nature will interact authentically, while those threatened by his unsought influence may react with envy or attempts to undermine him. But the spotlight remains, a testament to the quiet power of a man who commands attention simply by being, rather than by doing. 7. The Martyr Trap. A common yet misguided reaction to the Sigma male's pronounced independence and self-reliance is the martyr trap. Concerned onlookers, often with a savior complex, will dramatically exclaim, "Help him! He's so isolated. He must be lonely." They then appoint themselves as the unsolicited saviors of a man who never sent out an SOS, who never asked for their intervention, and who is, more often than not, perfectly content and thriving in his chosen mode of existence. This rescue mission can manifest in various ways. Casseroles left at his door, pity invites to social events he'd likely prefer to avoid, or the offering of unsolicited advice and armchair therapy. These actions, while often disguised as compassion or genuine concern, frequently stem from a deeper, unacknowledged motive. They are, in essence, trying to cage a wild wolf, not for the wolf's benefit, but to prove to themselves that they are capable zookeepers. The Sigma male's self-sufficiency can be deeply unsettling to those who define their own worth through their utility to others, or who gain a sense of superiority by helping those they deem less capable or fortunate. His apparent lack of neediness challenges their worldview and their role within it. The Sigma male's polite but firm refusal to be saved, his disinterest in their well-intentioned but ultimately condescending interventions, then serves to expose their hero complex in stark relief. When he doesn't perform the role of the grateful rescue, when he doesn't validate their attempts to fix a situation that he doesn't perceive as broken, they can become frustrated, confused, or even resentful. Their narrative of him as a lonely, struggling soul crumbles, revealing their projection for what it was. True strength, as embodied by the Sigma male and echoed in Stoic teachings, needs no external pedestal of pity or validation through dependence. His isolation is often a deliberate choice, a carefully cultivated space for reflection, deep work, and authentic living, free from the noise and obligations of excessive social entanglement. He understands the difference between solitude, which is enriching, and loneliness, which is a deficiency, a distinction his would-be saviors often blur. Ultimately, the Martyr Trap fails because it is based on a fundamental misunderstanding of the Sigma male's internal landscape. He isn't a victim awaiting rescue. He's an architect of his own life, comfortable with his own company and capable of seeking connection on his own terms, if and when he chooses. Their attempts to cast him in a lesser role only highlight their own need to feel needed, while he continues on his path, needing no permission and certainly no salvation from an outside world that struggles to comprehend his quiet power. 8. The fantasy collapse. People have a natural tendency to create narratives, to fit individuals into familiar archetypes, and the Sigma male, with his often enigmatic persona, becomes a prime candidate for such projections. They script him in their minds as the tragic genius, burdened by an intellect too profound for the common world. Or perhaps he's the billionaire hermit, shunning society because of some untold wealth or secret power. Sometimes he's cast as the warrior poet, possessing a fierce spirit hidden beneath a calm exterior. They project these grand, often romanticized, archetypes onto the blank canvas of his quietude and self-possession. This creation of a fantasy persona serves a purpose for the observer. It makes the Sigma male more digestible, more exciting, or perhaps less threatening by fitting him into a known, albeit exaggerated, category. It's easier to interact with a myth than with a complex, unpredictable human being who defies easy classification. They build up this elaborate mental image, embellishing his silences with profound thoughts and his solitary habits with mysterious undertakings. But then, reality inevitably intrudes and the fantasy collapses. The tragic genius is seen buying groceries with a mundane shopping list. The billionaire hermit is observed laughing heartily at an internet meme. The warrior poet politely says, "Excuse me, could you pass the salt?" during a simple meal. These perfectly normal, human moments shatter the carefully constructed myth, and the reaction from the observer can be surprisingly intense, often manifesting as disappointment or even a strange form of anger. This anger isn't truly directed at the Sigma male himself for failing to live up to their projected image. It's an anger directed at their own delusion, at the collapse of a narrative they had invested in. They feel let down not by him, but by the sudden stark realization that he is simply a man, albeit a self-directed and independent one, rather than the larger-than-life character they had conjured. The Stoic acceptance of reality, which the Sigma male often embodies, is precisely what shatters their elaborate fictions. The true power of the Sigma male in this context lies in his consistent defiance of these imposed tropes. He isn't a character in their story. He is and always has been the author of his own far more grounded and authentic narrative. His refusal to perform according to their scripts, his simple act of being himself, is what causes their fantastical constructions to crumble, leaving them to confront the uncomfortable gap between their expectations and his reality. 9. The loyalty test. In their attempts to understand or gain leverage with a Sigma male, some individuals resort to manufacturing crises specifically designed to gauge his allegiance, the loyalty test. They create situations, often subtly, where he is forced to choose, to demonstrate his commitment or care in a way that aligns with their expectations. This can take the form of feigned emergencies requiring his immediate attention, emotionally charged guilt trips designed to pull at his sense of duty, or even staged minor betrayals by third parties to see if he will take their side. The underlying goal is always the same: to force him to outwardly prove his loyalty to them. These tests are born out of insecurity and a misunderstanding of the Sigma male's approach to relationships and obligations. He typically doesn't engage in performative loyalty or respond well to emotional blackmail. His commitments, when made, are genuine and deeply considered, not offered up as proof to satisfy someone else's anxieties. He operates on principles of integrity and mutual respect, rather than a fluctuating currency of demonstrated fealty demanded by others. He values authentic connection, not coerced displays. His response to such loyalty tests is often one of calm, clearly defined boundaries, which can be misinterpreted as cruelty or indifference by the tester. It isn't that he lacks compassion or the capacity for loyalty. Rather, he refuses to participate in games of emotional manipulation. He serves truth and his own rational assessment of a situation, not the inflated ego or insecurities of someone attempting to ensnare him in a manufactured drama. His stoic-like rationality allows him to see through the manipulative intent of the test. This clarity and refusal to be drawn into their emotional vortex often scalds those who trade in emotional blackmail. They expect a certain reaction, perhaps guilt, immediate compliance, or an outpouring of concern. And when they receive a measured, logical, and boundary-respecting response instead, their strategy backfires. The Sigma male doesn't feel the need to prove his worth or his loyalty through orchestrated trials. His actions and his consistent character are his testament. Ultimately, the loyalty test reveals more about the tester's need for control and validation than it does about the Sigma male's capacity for allegiance. He understands that true loyalty is earned and given freely, a byproduct of mutual respect and shared values, not something that can be extracted under duress. His refusal to play these games is a quiet assertion of his sovereignty and his commitment to authentic rather than performative relationships. 10. The post-exit haunting. When a Sigma male decides to disengage from a person, a group, or a situation, often quietly and without dramatic fanfare, his absence can create a peculiar haunting effect on those left behind. Even after he has effectively ghosted them, making a clean and decisive break, they may find themselves obsessively stalking his digital footprints, replaying past interactions, or discussing his departure endlessly. This isn't usually driven by a genuine desire to reconnect or reconcile. It's more akin to an autopsy, a compulsive need to understand why he left and what his departure signifies about them. The central questions that plague them are often variations of, "Why didn't he fight for us?" Or, "Is he happier now without us?" Or, "What did we do to make him leave?" His absence becomes a phantom limb, an ache that reminds them of something they couldn't hold on to, something they perhaps didn't fully understand or appreciate until it was gone. The Sigma male's ability to detach and move on, often with what appears to be minimal emotional residue, can be deeply unsettling for those who invest heavily in enmeshed relationships or expect grand emotional displays to signify importance. The reason his departure often forces such an uncomfortable introspection is because it brings to the surface a question they may dread confronting. Was I or were we ultimately just noise in his life? His disengagement, usually devoid of angry outbursts or lengthy explanations, doesn't give them a clear target for their own potential anger or frustration. It's hard to rage against a void. He embodies the stoic wisdom of calmly removing oneself from unvirtuous or unproductive situations, without needing to assign blame or create further turmoil. Sigmas typically don't leave by burning bridges in a blaze of glory. They are more likely to evaporate, to simply fade out of a dynamic that no longer serves their growth or aligns with their principles. This method of departure, while efficient for him, leaves no satisfyingly concrete trace for those left behind to rage against or to use for dramatic retellings. There's no villain, no clear-cut betrayal to rally against, only a quiet, firm, and often irreversible absence. This post-exit haunting, therefore, is less about the Sigma male himself and more about the void he leaves and the uncomfortable self-reflection it forces upon others. His ability to move forward, focused on his own path, serves as a stark contrast to their potential inability to let go, highlighting his independence and their possible overinvestment in his presence or approval. To the Sigmas watching right now, do you feel that? That subtle, sometimes overt pressure? The world spins, sometimes madly, attempting to understand you, to categorize you, to unbalance you. Every perplexed glance, every whispered speculation, every emotional grenade lobbed in your direction. Consider it the inevitable tax on your sovereignty, a consequence of walking a path less traveled. But here's the crucial insight rooted in the wisdom of ages. You don't have to pay it with your peace of mind. Your internal state is your inviolable fortress. And to the observers on this channel, those of you here because you sense a deeper truth in this way of being, you are witnessing something profound. You're here because you recognize, perhaps intuitively, that true, lasting power isn't seized through aggression or performative dominance. It's emanated, quietly and consistently, from a core of unshakable self-possession. Study the principles, not to mindlessly copy external traits, but to remember what society may have urged you to forget. You owe no one a performance. Your life is your own script to write. Now, let's return to understanding their unraveling, the better to navigate it with clarity and strength. 11. The Vulnerability Grenade. In a desperate bid to breach the Sigma male's carefully maintained emotional fortress, some individuals resort to deploying what can only be described as a vulnerability grenade. This tactic involves an abrupt and often overwhelming overshare of personal trauma, intimate details, unsolicited nude images or tearful dramatic breakdowns, all aimed directly at him. The implicit, sometimes explicit message is, if I shatter myself before you, you'll be forced to react, to catch me, to engage on a deeply emotional level. It's an attempt to blast open his armor through sheer emotional force. This strategy is born from a fundamental misunderstanding of the Sigma male's nature and his approach to intimacy and emotional exchange. They mistake his composure for coldness, his reserve for a wall that needs to be demolished. But Sigmas, while capable of deep connection, are rarely swayed by emotional coercion or performative vulnerability. They are, in many ways, fortresses of self-mastery, and such a sudden detonation of raw, unsolicited emotion often has the opposite effect to what is intended. Instead of drawing him in, it makes him retreat further, higher into the ramparts of his own well-guarded inner world. He recognizes, often intuitively, the manipulative undercurrent of such displays. True intimacy for a Sigma male isn't the product of an emotional explosion or a forced confession. It's a slow reveal, a delicate dance of mutual respect, trust, and understanding, earned over time through consistent, authentic interaction. It isn't something that can be fast-tracked with what amounts to emotional napalm, designed to create shock and force a reaction. He values genuine connection, not a rescue mission born from someone else's emotional crisis. The aftermath of a deployed vulnerability grenade is usually awkwardness and distance. The Sigma male is not an emotional paramedic rushing to the scene of every self-inflicted wound. He understands the Stoic principle of focusing on what is his to control, his own responses, his own emotional state, and not becoming entangled in the uncontrolled emotional tempests of others, especially when they feel coercive. He may offer rational compassion from a distance, but he will resist being pulled into the vortex. Ultimately, the vulnerability grenade fails because it seeks to bypass the essential ingredients of genuine connection: consent, reciprocity, and authentic sharing within a framework of established trust. It's a tactic of desperation, and it only serves to highlight the sender's emotional instability, while reinforcing the Sigma male's preference for rational, respectful, and earned intimacy. 12. The Mimicry Meltdown. Beyond the initial chameleon ploy of copying style, there's a more invested form of imitation that can lead to a mimicry meltdown. Individuals become so fixated on the Sigma male's perceived essence that they attempt to parrot his slang, adopt his niche hobbies, even replicate his exact coffee order or his philosophical leanings, all in a desperate attempt to siphon off some of his perceived power or mystique. They believe that by meticulously copying the details of his life, they can somehow absorb his inherent qualities. This imitation is often driven by a deep admiration mixed with a lack of personal identity. They see the Sigma male navigating life with a sense of purpose and calm that they covet, and they erroneously conclude that his habits and preferences are the source of his strength, rather than byproducts of his internal mindset. They lease their identity from his aura, hoping that by acting like him, they will eventually feel like him and be perceived by others as he is. However, the Sigma male is rarely static. He is a creature of growth, evolution, and introspection. True to his independent nature and his stoic inclination towards self-improvement and adaptability, he might suddenly quit caffeine, drop a long-standing hobby that no longer serves him, or completely reinvent his approach to a particular aspect of his life. When these shifts occur, often without announcement or explanation, the mimic's carefully constructed facade crumbles. Their borrowed identity, leased directly from his observable behaviors, suddenly loses its foundation. This is the Mimicry Meltdown. The copier is left adrift, their script suddenly obsolete. They may react with confusion, frustration, or even a sense of betrayal, as if the Sigma male changed the rules of a game they thought they were mastering. Their entire effort was based on a fixed image, and his natural evolution exposes the superficiality of their imitation. Their collapse is a stark and often uncomfortable proof that authenticity cannot be plagiarized, and an identity built on imitation is inherently fragile. Ultimately, the Mimicry Meltdown serves as a powerful lesson. True essence comes from within. The Sigma male's strength isn't in his coffee order or his hobbies. It's in his ability to choose, to adapt, to discard what no longer serves him, and to define himself from the inside out. The meltdown of the mimic is simply the inevitable consequence of trying to build a persona on someone else's ever-shifting ground. 13. The false alliance. Factions, organizations, corporations, even informal cliques and social circles, will often extend an invitation to the Sigma male. Join us. Become one of us. They offer the promise of brotherhood, belonging, or influence, hoping to harness his perceived integrity, his quiet strength, or his unique perspective for their own agenda. They see his solitary nature not as a deliberate choice, but as a vacancy waiting to be filled, an untapped resource for their collective. They mistake his silence and observant nature for an unspoken desire to be recruited. These groups often fail to grasp the fundamental operating system of the Sigma male. His refusal to readily join their ranks isn't an act of rebellion, nor is it necessarily a judgment of their specific cause or group. It is, more often than not, an act of profound discernment. He values his autonomy and his internal compass above the allure of collective identity or the borrowed significance that can come from aligning with a powerful faction. He is wary of groupthink and the potential compromise of his principles that often accompanies membership. The Sigma male doesn't instinctively seek to fill seats at tables that feel broken, misaligned with his values, or that demand conformity as the price of admission. He understands, as the Stoics did, the importance of aligning his actions with his core beliefs. If a group's foundation seems unstable, its ethics questionable, or its proclaimed unity a mere facade for internal power struggles, he will quietly decline the invitation, preferring his own counsel and his own path. Instead of merely seeking a place within existing structures, Sigmas are often more inclined to build their own tables, to create their own frameworks, or to operate independently, collaborating on their own terms when true alignment of purpose is found. Their loyalty is to principles, not necessarily to organizations. They assess alliances based on genuine shared values and mutual respect, not on promises of status or belonging. Therefore, the offer of a false alliance, one that prioritizes the group's needs over his individual integrity or autonomy, is typically met with a polite but firm declination, or simply a quiet, continued distance. His power lies in his independence, and he is instinctively protective of it, recognizing that true strength is often diluted, not amplified, by assimilation into a collective that doesn't truly resonate with his core. 14. The credibility raid. When other tactics to understand, control, or diminish the Sigma male fail, some will resort to a credibility raid, attempting to undermine his current standing by excavating and weaponizing his past failures or perceived shortcomings. They'll diligently unearth stories of a college dropout phase, a business venture that went bankrupt years ago, a past heartbreak, or any instance where he didn't achieve a perfect outcome. This historical evidence is then presented, often out of context, as proof that he is inherently flawed, not as competent as he appears, or perhaps even a fraud. This tactic is rooted in a desire to level the playing field by tarnishing his image, especially if his current success or composure makes them feel inadequate. They operate under the assumption that past failures are indelible stains that invalidate present strength. What they fail to comprehend is the Sigma male's relationship with his own history, which is often deeply influenced by a stoic acceptance of life's challenges and the lessons they impart. He doesn't hide his scars, he often wears them as medals, quiet testaments to battles fought and lessons learned. His past isn't a hostage that can be used against him. For him, it's often the very fuel that has forged his resilience, his wisdom, and his determination. He has likely already processed these experiences, extracted their value, and integrated them into his present self. Unlike those who are haunted or defined by their past mistakes, the Sigma male tends to view them as essential parts of his journey, stepping stones rather than stumbling blocks. He has learned what is within his control and what isn't, and dwelling on unchangeable past events is not part of his philosophy. Attacking his history in an attempt to discredit his present is, therefore, akin to throwing stones at a mountain. The mountain was there before the stone thrower arrived, shaped by forces far grander than their petty attacks, and it will remain long after they have exhausted themselves. The raiders reveal their own short-sightedness and their inability to understand growth, redemption, or the transformative power of overcoming adversity. Ultimately, the credibility raid usually falls flat, or even backfires, by inadvertently highlighting the Sigma male's journey of resilience. His refusal to be shamed by his past, his calm acknowledgement of his whole story, imperfections included, strips the attack of its intended venom. He knows his worth is not contingent on a flawless record, but on his enduring commitment to his principles and his capacity for continual evolution. 15. The Energy Vampire. The Sigma male, with his aura of calm capability and insightful silence, often becomes an unwitting target for the energy vampire. These are individuals who seek to siphon his focus, his time, and his mental energy for their own benefit, often under the guise of seeking advice or a brief connection. Phrases like, "Can I just pick your brain for a minute?" Or, "Just one coffee. I desperately need your advice on this," are their common entry points. They are drawn to his perceived wellspring of clarity and stability, hoping some of it will rub off on them or solve their problems. These individuals often treat the Sigma male's time, his deep attention, and his precious silence as if they were communal property, free for the taking. They don't necessarily intend malice, but they are fundamentally takers, attracted to his centered energy without offering much, if anything, in return. Once they have had their fill, a burst of his focused attention, a piece of insightful advice, or simply the comfort of his stabilizing presence, they often vanish as quickly as they appeared, leaving him feeling subtly drained. However, Sigma males, valuing their autonomy and internal resources, tend to guard their energy as if it were gold. They are acutely aware of its finite nature and the importance of directing it towards their own goals and well-being. Through experience, they learn to recognize the patterns of energy vampirism. They understand the Stoic principle of preserving one's inner resources and not allowing them to be squandered by external demands that offer no reciprocal value or alignment with their purpose. His defense against such vampires isn't usually aggressive confrontation. Instead, it's the art of the subtle boundary, being less available, offering more concise responses, or simply redirecting the conversation in a way that doesn't invite prolonged energy drainage. He doesn't feel an obligation to be an endless fountain of guidance or emotional support for every passerby. He knows he doesn't owe anyone his radiance on demand. The message, often unspoken but clear, is that everyone is responsible for cultivating their own light, for managing their own energy. The Sigma male has done the internal work to build his reserves, and he will not readily allow them to be depleted by those who seek a quick fix rather than undertaking their own journey of self-discovery and problem-solving. He might gently encourage them to eclipse themselves, to find their own source, rather than constantly seeking to bask in or drain his. 16. The frame war. A common tactic used, consciously or unconsciously, to destabilize or engage a Sigma male is to initiate a frame war. This involves attempting to bait him into debates on contentious topics, provoking him with polarizing political statements, or staging ideological traps designed to force him onto a predetermined conversational battlefield. The goal is to compel him to adopt their frame of reference, to fight on their chosen ground, and to expend his energy defending positions within a construct they have created. These instigators often thrive on conflict, on the intellectual sparring itself, or on the emotional reactions elicited by controversial subjects. They may see the Sigma male's quiet, observant nature as a challenge, and seek to draw him out, to make him declare his allegiances, or simply to disrupt his characteristic calm. They want him to react, to engage, to become invested in their chosen drama, thereby validating their framework and their own importance within it. However, the Sigma male's typical response to such provocations is often a polite but firm declination to engage on those terms. This isn't necessarily born of apathy or ignorance about the issues at hand. Rather, it's an assertion of his cognitive sovereignty. He understands that engaging in every battle he's invited to is a surefire way to deplete his mental and emotional resources. He embodies the Stoic wisdom of choosing one's battles carefully, and more importantly, choosing the terms of engagement if he chooses to engage at all. Sigmas generally don't play chess on boards designed by others, especially if the game itself seems rigged or pointless. They prefer to observe, to analyze, and if necessary to design their own game, one that aligns with their principles and objectives. His refusal to be baited isn't a sign of weakness, but of strategic thinking and emotional discipline. He conserves his energy for matters he deems truly significant, refusing to be drawn into performative arguments or ideological purity tests. By declining to enter the frame war, the Sigma male effectively invalidates the premise of the battle. His calm detachment often frustrates the provocateur, whose carefully laid trap fails to ensnare its intended target. He demonstrates that true power lies not in winning every argument, but in choosing which arguments are worth having, and in maintaining control over one's own focus and intellectual freedom. 17. The false humility show. Another subtle yet telling reaction to the Sigma male's inherent confidence and self-possession is the false humility show. Individuals employing this tactic will often make statements dripping with feigned modesty, typically punctuated by a backhanded comparison clearly aimed at him. Phrases like, "Oh, I'm just a simple person, not special at all," unlike some people who seem to have it all figured out, are classic examples. The intent is to subtly pressure him into denying his own competence or downplaying his strengths, to lure him into a reciprocal performance of false modesty. This behavior often stems from discomfort with genuine, unboastful self-assurance. In a society that sometimes conflates confidence with arrogance, the Sigma male's quiet certainty about his own capabilities can make those less secure in themselves feel inadequate or judged. By performing an exaggerated humility, they are implicitly criticizing his lack of such a display, hoping to make him feel arrogant by comparison, or to coax him into a self-deprecating dance that would put him on their perceived level. But Sigma males, valuing authenticity and possessing a rationally derived self-awareness, typically don't trade in false modesty. They understand their strengths and weaknesses with a degree of clarity that makes performative self-deprecation feel dishonest and unnecessary. When confronted with the false humility show, his response is often a simple, quiet thank you, if a compliment was embedded, or a neutral acknowledgement that effectively gets their script. He doesn't take the bait to diminish himself. His confidence isn't arrogance, it's accuracy. It's born from self-reflection, from overcoming challenges, and from a stoic understanding of focusing on his own virtues and capabilities without needing to broadcast them or, conversely, falsely deny them. He sees no virtue in pretending to be less than he is, just as he sees no virtue in pretending to be more. He aims for an honest assessment and an authentic presentation of self. The false humility show, therefore, usually fails to elicit the desired response from a Sigma male. His refusal to participate in the charade of exaggerated meekness can be frustrating for those who rely on such social games. He demonstrates that true humility isn't about self-abasement, but about having a right-sized view of oneself, one that acknowledges both strengths and limitations without pretense. 18. The Tribal Scapegoat. When a group, team, or even a social circle begins to implode under the weight of its own internal dysfunctions, a common and cowardly response is to find a scapegoat, and the Sigma male often becomes an unwilling candidate for this role. Because he typically operates with a degree of detachment, maintaining his own counsel and not fully immersing himself in the group's internal politics or dramas, he can be an easy target. The accusation is often vague but damning. His energy divided us. Or, things were fine until he became distant. The truth, however, is frequently the opposite. More often than not, the Sigma male, with his calm demeanor and rational perspective, may have been the unacknowledged keystone holding their fragile facade partially intact. His presence might have subtly tempered extremes, or his quiet competence might have compensated for others' shortcomings. His eventual withdrawal or refusal to be drawn deeper into their escalating dysfunction isn't the cause of the collapse. It's merely the event that exposes the rot that was always there, a rot they can no longer stomach or ignore once his stabilizing influence is removed. This scapegoating mechanism serves as a convenient way for the actual architects of the group's failure to avoid accountability. It's easier to blame the outsider, the one who didn't fully conform, than to engage in painful self-reflection about their own contributions to the problem, their poor communication, their ego clashes, their lack of shared vision, or their toxic behaviors. The Sigma male, by not being enmeshed, is a safer target than confronting the real issues within the tribe. He rarely engages in defending himself against such accusations, especially if the group is already committed to its narrative of blame. He understands the futility of reasoning with those who are not seeking truth but merely a convenient outlet for their failure and frustration. Drawing on stoic resilience, he accepts the injustice without internalizing it, knowing that the opinions of a failing collective do not define his character or his actions. Ultimately, Sigmas don't inherently break systems or cause divisions. Their presence and their eventual, often quiet, departure merely reveal how brittle and dysfunctional those systems or groups always were beneath the surface. The act of scapegoating him is the group's final, desperate attempt to avoid facing their own reflection in the mirror of their collapse. 19. The Gaze Hold. A subtle yet potent power play often directed at the Sigma male is the gaze hold. In social or professional settings, individuals may attempt to assert dominance or challenge his composure by locking eyes with him and maintaining an intense, unblinking stare. They are waiting, often unconsciously, for him to be the first to break eye contact, to fidget, to show discomfort, or to somehow acknowledge their perceived dominance through his submission in this silent battle of wills. It's a primal, nonverbal test of mettle. This behavior is frequently employed by those who rely on traditional, overt displays of power or intimidation. They interpret the Sigma male's quiet confidence as a challenge to their own status and attempt to reassert their position in the perceived hierarchy through this direct, visual confrontation. They expect him to either cower, become aggressive, or at the very least show a sign of being affected by their intensity. However, the Sigma male's typical response to the gaze hold is often disarming to the challenger. He doesn't usually respond with aggression, nor does he typically avert his eyes in a show of deference. Instead, he is likely to return the gaze calmly, with a neutral or even slightly curious expression that doesn't demand anything but simply allows the connection. His gaze isn't a counterattack, it's an acknowledgement, devoid of the underlying tension or competitive energy the challenger is trying to impose. He has mastered a degree of emotional regulation that prevents him from being easily baited. Dominance, from the Sigma male's perspective, isn't something that is won or lost in fleeting eye contact wars. It is an internal state settled long before the first glance is exchanged. His self-assurance comes from within, not from besting others in superficial power plays. He understands that true strength doesn't need to constantly prove itself through such confrontations. He's not trying to win a staring contest. He's simply present and unperturbed. As a result, the gaze hold often dissolves without a clear winner, in the way the challenger intended. The Sigma male's calm, unreactive return gaze can make the aggressor feel self-conscious or their attempt at intimidation seem crude and ineffective. He demonstrates that true power doesn't need to engage in every petty challenge, subtly teaching that the strongest position is often the one that refuses to be drawn into the game. 20. The nostalgia bait. When other methods of connection or influence prove ineffective, some individuals will attempt to use nostalgia bait with a Sigma male. They will dangle shared memories, past experiences, or old inside jokes like a key, hoping to unlock his present reserve or to access a perceived softer, more accessible part of him. Remember that time when they'll begin wistfully recounting a moment from the past, often one where they felt a stronger connection or a more reciprocal dynamic with him. The implication is that the good old days represent a more desirable state to which they should both return. This tactic is often employed by those who feel his current independence or emotional distance as a loss. They may genuinely miss a past version of their relationship, or they may be attempting to leverage a sense of shared history to gain current favor, influence, or simply a more engaged response from him. They hope that by evoking warm, sentimental feelings, they can lower his guard or re-establish a bond on terms that were more comfortable or familiar to them. However, Sigma males, while capable of appreciating and learning from their past, generally do not live in it. They embody a stoic-like focus on the present moment and the future they are building. While they might acknowledge a shared memory with politeness, they are unlikely to allow sentimentality to become a lever that manipulates their present decisions or compromises their current boundaries. They understand that life is about growth and evolution, and that relationships, like individuals, change over time. His response to nostalgia bait is typically polite but contained. He might offer a brief acknowledgement of the memory, perhaps even a smile, but he rarely allows it to derail his present focus or alter his current interactions significantly. Memory lane, for those trying to use it as an access route, often dead ends at the firm but gentle boundaries he maintains in the present. He honors the past for what it was, but he doesn't see it as a blueprint for or an obligation upon his future. Ultimately, the use of nostalgia bait highlights a misunderstanding of the Sigma male's forward momentum. He isn't cold or unfeeling towards his past, but he is also not shackled by it. He recognizes that clinging to yesterday can impede the progress of tomorrow. His journey is one of continuous self-development, and while the past informs him, it does not define or dictate his present engagements. 21. The Overcompensation Parade. In the vicinity of a Sigma male, whose presence often speaks volumes without uttering a word, you may witness the Overcompensation Parade. Individuals, feeling overshadowed or perhaps simply seeking the attention that seems to gravitate towards him naturally, will engage in conspicuously loud behavior, flaunt expensive possessions, or make exaggerated, flashy gestures. Loud cars with thumping bass suddenly rev their engines, boasts about recent achievements become significantly amplified, and purchases are displayed with theatrical casualness, all staged with an acute awareness of his proximity. It's a desperate, often subconscious scream of, "Look at me too. I matter. I am also significant." This behavior is a direct reaction to the Sigma male's quiet confidence and his apparent lack of need for external validation. His stillness, his self-contained nature, inadvertently acts as a spotlight on their own insecurities and their deep-seated hunger for acknowledgement. They attempt to fill the perceived void, or compete with his understated presence, by turning up the volume on their own lives, hoping that sheer noise and spectacle will command the attention they crave. The irony is that the Sigma male's characteristic stillness and internal focus often turn their frantic circus into mere background static. His lack of reaction to their ostentatious displays, his failure to be visibly impressed or intimidated, only serves to amplify the perceived futility of their efforts. He isn't judging them. He's often simply not registering their performance on the level they intend, because his metrics for value and significance are internal, not based on external showmanship. This embodies a stoic indifference to superficialities. Validation seekers in this context are like firecrackers, loud, briefly spectacular, but quickly fading into insignificance. The Sigma male, in contrast, is more akin to the night sky, vast, enduring, and possessing a quiet grandeur that needs no announcement. His power is in his being, not in his doing for show. He doesn't need to compete in the currency of loudness or flashiness because he operates on a different value system altogether. Ultimately, the Overcompensation Parade is a self-defeating strategy when aimed at gaining the Sigma male's genuine regard, or at diminishing his presence. It only highlights the performer's own lack of inner contentment and their dependence on external validation, while further underscoring the Sigma's quiet, unshakable self-assurance, which needs no such fanfare. 22. The Unshakable Calm. After all other attempts to categorize, provoke, or understand the Sigma male have been exhausted, some may resort to a final, desperate test: the deliberate manufacturing of chaos. This can involve direct yelling, unfounded accusations, public shaming attempts, or creating highly stressful, emotionally charged situations around him. Their subconscious goal is to finally break through his composure, to see a crack in the facade, to make the perceived beast roar. They want to elicit a strong emotional reaction that would, in their eyes, finally make him readable, or prove he's just like everyone else underneath. This is their ultimate provocation, a last-ditch effort to gain some form of control or understanding by forcing him out of his centered state. They believe that if they can just push hard enough, apply enough pressure, he will eventually succumb to the same emotional disarray that they themselves might experience in such circumstances. They are essentially daring him to lose his stoic-inspired equanimity. But it is often in these moments of manufactured chaos that the Sigma male's power reaches its peak, and it does so not with a roar but often with a whisper. Instead of meeting fire with fire, he might respond with an almost unnerving, unshakable calm. He may offer a single concisely spoken truth, delivered softly but with profound clarity, that completely vaporizes the storm of their making. Or he might simply observe their outburst with a detached patience that deflates their aggressive energy more effectively than any counterattack could. Why does this happen? Because he fights nothing in the conventional sense. Yes. His strength doesn't come from opposing force with equal force, but from a deep well of internal stability and rational thought. He has, through discipline and introspection, cultivated an ability to detach from the emotional currents of others, to observe rather than absorb their turmoil. He doesn't take their bait because he sees the hook. And in that state of being, untamed by their provocations, unbroken by their pressure, unshakable in his core, he subtly rewrites every rule of engagement they worship. He demonstrates that true strength isn't about the volume of one's anger or the intensity of one's reaction, but about the quiet, steadfast control of one's inner world, regardless of the storms raging outside. This unshakable calm is perhaps the most profound and unsettling response of all, leaving the agitators to confront the futility of their own chaos. These 22 reactions, these intricate human dances around the presence of a Sigma male, are more than just curiosities. They are a testament to the impact of a man who lives by an internal code, a man who prioritizes self-mastery and authentic existence over the fleeting approval of the crowd. If you recognize the world around you or perhaps even glimpses of your own journey within these observations, understand that this is the path of principled independence. It's a path that naturally challenges, and by challenging, it reveals. Don't just let these insights remain passive knowledge. Reflect on them. Consider how these dynamics play out in your own life and how a steadfast, rational, and resilient mindset, the core of stoic strength, can navigate them with grace and power. The aim isn't to judge those who react, but to understand the currents so you can steer your own ship with greater skill. This is the essence of growth that we champion here at Sigma Male Community. If this exploration resonated with you, if it sparked a deeper understanding or a renewed commitment to your own path of excellence, then show your support. Hit that like button. It tells us this is the kind of empowering content you value. More importantly, share your own experiences and insights in the comments below. This community isn't just a channel, it's a collective of men dedicated to becoming the strongest, most authentic versions of themselves, and your voice adds to that strength. Share this video with other men who walk this path, men who will appreciate this level of analysis. And if you haven't already, ensure you are subscribed to Sigma Male Community and that your notification bell is activated. We are committed to being your trusted source, your consistent guide for practical wisdom, stoic living, and the relentless pursuit of personal development in a world that desperately needs men of character and resolve. Don't just watch from the sidelines. Become an active architect of your own unshakable reality. Until next time, stay focused, stay resilient, and continue to build the life you are destined to lead.